He is so knowledgeable and so dedicated to getting things right in terms of the period and the accoutrement of the period. Making sure the saddles and everything else were right considering the time. And he's just a pleasure to work with. And that he's dedicated to doing something of quality. And I don't think he had any trouble convincing any of us to join in.
Mm. And did you see the original 1970s version yourself before you signed up to this project? Or obviously, when you got the role, you probably look back in it, but were you aware of the original film?
I was very aware of it. I'm a huge fan of that film. Lee was a friend of mine. We worked together on a film called Emperor of the North with Lee and Ernest Borgnine and myself, and he and I were friends until he passed. And I remember when that film came out, and I remember being absolutely gobsmacked by that movie, particularly the bronking, the bronking horse, the bronc breaking sequence when Lee's character is on top of that horse and he breaks this supposedly unbreakable stud horse, and that sequence was unforgettable. And Marvin's performance of he was never anything but great. And Jack Palance as Chet was terrific. I remember, and Jean Moreau was in that film. I mean, it was an extraordinary film for its time. And I thought, can we get away with actually telling this story again? And I think we did. I think Tom did a heck of a job. I think we made a really worthy film, and we were all aware of the ghosts of the original Monte Walsh, and yet we had a great time making the film. We shot it in Calgary, British Ontario, and it was Calgary, Alberta, and it was just it was a great experience.
Yeah, I suppose the stunning background of the Rockies, the Canadian mountains, they almost felt M&S with Wyoming back in 1892. They didn't look out of place at all.
No, no. The terrain matched. It was good. It wasn't like going to a foreign country and trying to pretend it was the northwestern United States. We were there. It was Canada, but it was the same range. The Rockies stretched from there down into Colorado, and it certainly looked right. And it was a glorious place to be.
What I really loved about watching this movie was the pacing of the movie. Dare I say, normally we think of movies in terms of Western, they always start with a big, massive scene, maybe a daring sort of scene, maybe a heist, maybe a lowdown, a shoot down, and then the story develops and we get to see the past. But this is a lovely pace. It gradually brings you in. Gradually, you get to know these characters. You get to get a sense, get a feel for who they are, their identities, where they come from, and dare I say, and it brings you with them. Dare I say, in a Jersey, it's not really an up down sort of a roller coaster in your sort of face. You can really follow the curve of this movie.
Yeah, and I think credit is due in great part to Simon Windsor, who is our director. And he's a horseman and a rancher himself. He's Australian, but he knows the genre inside and out. I mean, he had a lot to do with the original um, Lonesome Dove. So he knows what he's doing. And in terms of being able to tell a story and have proper pace to it, I credit Simon with putting that together and overseeing the editing of the film. And I also credit Tom. I mean, he was directly involved with all of every aspect of the filmmaking. And I'm sure that he had a lot to do with making sure that the pace of the editing and the telling of the story were what you described.
Yeah, and as well in terms of this movie, we always think of the old traditional cowboy as this sort of hardened sort of character, the ice in their sort of veins, dare I say. But dare I say, we get to see maybe the humble side of these people. We get to see Chet's, your own character's relationship with a widow. We get to see the faults of Monty as well, his shortcomings as well. Dare I say, we get to see the human sort of versions of these sort of characters. Westerns always put up these show boys or these show boys of the past that they're unbreakable, that they're these undaunting sort of figures that dare I say that don't have any sort of weaknesses to their character. But Monte Walsh shows the highs, but it also shows the vulnerabilities of these people, these everyday people.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that has to do with the novelist who wrote the original story. It's the same man who wrote Shane. These are classic Western stories. And when you're telling a story about that time period and that place in time. The natural world has everything to do with the rhythms of life, the people who were living that life in that place at that time, and the rhythms of nature and the exigencies of nature. And I think all of that has an effect on one's being on a daily basis. And I think that there is an energy that exists within that realm, and I think all of these characters reflect that. There's not a whole lot to do as a cowboy after the sun goes down. It's kind of a daytime occupation. You're up early, you work hard, the sun goes down, you relax and call it a night. And I think that those rhythms are reflected in the storytelling and in the personalities of the characters who were doing that at that point in time.
And was it very much a heavy on stunt scene for most of the characters? Obviously, your own character as well. Was there an awful lot involved in terms of the whole sort of stunts for this movie? Because we get to see you up in horses, dare I say, for a good bit of this movie.
Yeah, I think. Well, Simon was quite specific. Simon Windsor. He said, don't bring me any actors who can't ride. It will not look right, and I need horsemen. I need actors who are horsemen. So he made sure that everyone who came into the film could handle themselves on horseback, and I think that's reflected because, listen, I mean, this is a story about guys who pretty much live on horses, so you better look comfortable doing it, and I think that's reflected by everyone's moments on horseback. William Devane, he's a horseman, obviously. You see that moment when he gets on his horse and backs up and rides away. It's so effortless, and he is so absolutely in control and knows what he's doing. I mean, I think he's a polo player in his spare time, or at least he was. And so you see that reflected in all of the actors who were in the film. And Simon Windsor, who is a horseman himself, he was quite adamant about that. And in fact, there was one actor that slipped through the cracks who was not a horseman. I won't mention any names, but it had to be shot around, and Simon was really he was kind of pissed off, that this actor got in there who couldn't ride, and it had to be shot around. We had to not show any stuff with him on horseback. So
I suppose, Keith, when you bring all these sorts of names together in terms of this sort of movie, and you're spending maybe 8 weeks above in Alberta, Calgary in Canada as well. I imagine there's some great stories and some great memories and some sort of funny moments in terms of shooting this as well. And was it obviously was it a good chapter, a good sequence in life? Because sometimes actors shoot so many movies and so many TV episodes they don't remember half of them, or some of them go through the slips, or some of them are non-memorable. It's just another job, another day, sort of in the office to everyone else who works in the modern world. But did this leave positive memories? Did you walk away with a smile on your face?
I think we all walked away smiling. We were happy as could be to be there. And one of the things that we did by design, and it was Tom's suggestion, he could not demand it because, the way the structure works, if you're not written into a scene that's shooting that day, you're not expected to be on set. But we were all playing ranch hands of this particular ranch that was run by Bill Devane. And we decided from the beginning. We had a couple of weeks where we were all up, getting back up, getting our horsemanship back in order. Some of us hadn't ridden in a while, so we were working out and chasing cows and throwing ropes and doing all of that. And we decided, and Tom suggested, we decided that every day we would all be there. Whether we were in a scene that was being shot or not. And that way, all of the background work, because a lot of times you will have background players who are playing the ranch hands, and you see them in the background doing chores and stuff. Well, every time you see that in this film, it's us. It's the actual players in the film. So there are no background extra actors in there pretending to be ranch hands. There's only the cast, and I think that was unique the way we did that. And we had a saying, we all said, hey, the set's where it's at. You come to the set and you're on the set. You don't go hang out in your dressing room. You're on the set. You're standing by. If there's a moment where you can be in the background doing some ranch chore, even though you're not in the written scene that's going to be filmed right then, you could be there and be in the background and be a part of it. And I think that lent a wonderful sense of camaraderie to the whole endeavor.
Yeah. So you almost felt that you were never out of the loop, but dare I say, any of you?
No, none of us ever felt that way. We were always all there all the time, and we just had a great time. It was, and there were a lot of laughs. I'm telling you, in that circumstance, it can get funny.
Keith, I'll take you on to more present times before we come back to close. Busy times for you at this moment. I do believe you're in a project at the moment that you might want to let our audience or our listeners know about, that we might see you, dare I say, in our TV screens or movie theaters maybe sometime in the near future. Have you a few projects in the pipeline?
Yeah, I did. In fact, I have a film that I did that's quite unique, and that is out there streaming right now. It's called The Devil and the Daylong Brothers, and it's described by the filmmakers. These are some young filmmakers and musician composer out of Georgia, the Atlanta area, east of Atlanta. We shot it down there, and they described this film as a Southern Gothic musical. And that's what it is. And it's an extraordinary group of young players in this thing. And because it's a musical, they are singers. So this is a story of redemption, of condemnation. I play this guy who sold his soul to the devil so that he could become a great blues singer. And in selling his soul to the devil, he also has sold the souls of all of his progeny, any children he has in the future. So I have, because of my errant ways, I have sired three boys. They are all grown up now, and all three of them understand that their souls are condemned, that their souls belong to the devil, and they have to find me and basically do away with me to try and get their souls back. And that's the story. And so there's plenty of mayhem that ensues in the telling of it. And during the course of the telling, these characters all break into song at one time or another. It's quite extraordinary what they did. The music's great. I guarantee you, check it out. You've never seen anything like it.
I imagine so. It sounds absorbing. I'm here trying to take it all in. So many thoughts running through my head. It seems to be like so many overriding sort of arcs in terms of this premise that you're saying.
Yeah, it's The Devil and the Daylong Brothers, and I know it's streaming on various platforms. If you look up the title, you can find it, and it's worth a look.
Yeah, and Keith, I do believe you were in Ireland in yesteryear, a few bygones sort of past, and I know it was for a short time, but you might enlighten of your audience, our audience, of your short trip and your memories that you shared.
I was filming in England, and we had occasion to shoot. This story was set in Ireland, but we shot most of it in and around Manchester. And we did have one occasion to shoot in Dublin. We came over there and did these scenes that we shot in Dublin. And then I had a few days, and I rented a car, and off I went exploring because I'd never been to Ireland. So I rented a car, and I drove that south and west, and I wound up going past the Cliffs of Moher, and I spent my first night at Dromoland Castle, and then I drove around the south end of Galloway Bay. I stopped in a little pub on the south side of the bay and had a bite and a pint, and then I drove around and wound up at the Ashford Castle on my second night. I remember driving through a little village called Dunloon at one point,
Okay.
and I had talked to a friend of mine. I said, I'd love to hear some Irish music, you know. And I drove through Dunloon, and there was a sign, and it was Saturday, and it said music every Saturday night. And I thought, that's probably, I went on my way, and I wound up at the Ashford Castle. I asked them about it. They sent me to a pub up the way, and I went into the pub to see if I could hear some music. And it was one guy with a guitar and a rhythm master, and he was playing top 40. It wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for traditional Irish music. And then I found this friend of mine who's a wonderful fiddle player back in the States. And he said, oh, you should have gone to this little village. They have it every Saturday night. It's called Dunloon. And I thought, oh my gosh, there I was. I didn't stop. That was the place to be. So, but I have very fond memories of that trip, and I do hope to get back to the old country sometime soon. I do have an Irish heritage. Yeah, the name Carradine was originally Corradini from Italy. Then it became Carradine in Spain, and then there was a Spaniard named Carradine who landed in Ireland, and it became Carradine.